The North Carolina legislature has introduced a bill that made me think, oh, the Tar Heels are leaving the ACC by themselves.
You are Locked On College Football, your daily podcast on all things college football. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Locked On College Football. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you so much for making this your first listen or your first view every day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day and your daily source to stay up to date with the biggest stories in the greatest sport on planet Earth. Realignment, coaching carousel, the portal, and so much more. We've always got you covered. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends at Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. We'll talk about how Joel Klatt, a guy I really like, said something pretty crazy recently on Colin Cowherd's show about Colorado. Shocking. And where Duke fits in the ACC. That's all coming up today. Speaking of the ACC, did you see the bill that is advancing through the North Carolina legislature? I know everybody loves these sorts of topics, and guess what? I do too, because they're kind of fascinating to try and read the tea leaves and see what everything means. When I saw that this bill was moving through, my first thought was, is North Carolina going to get out of this potential arrangement or tie to NC State? Do they not have to carry the Wolfpack backpack with them on their way out the door of the ACC? Now, just to be clear, North Carolina, unlike Florida State and Clemson, have not brought a lawsuit against the ACC to sue to leave the league. However, they had a board of trustees member, come out and say, yeah, we need to either renegotiate the deal or get out of the ACC. So they've thought about it. They've at least had discussions about it. So when I see a bill that is going to require North Carolina to play NC State and other in-state schools in football and other major sports, men's and women's basketball, in the years to come, my first thought is, why would they be requiring that? What are they thinking about? What are they preparing for that leads them to think, hey, we should make sure that these teams continue to play each other? Do you know how many FBS schools are in the state of North Carolina? Probably more than you think. Do you remember that Charlotte, who's in the American Conference, they're in the state of North Carolina? You, of course, have Duke and Wake Forest and NC State and North Carolina, which is why I've said before, keeping UNC and the state of North Carolina pretty integral to maintaining the ACC at all. You got 4 members in there. You've also got Appalachian State. You've got East Carolina in the mix. Those are in the American Conference, of course, but that is kind of the point of this particular bill. So, per various reports, quote, the UNC System Board of Governors recently gave itself more power over universities that wish to change athletic conferences. The board is appointed by the House and Senate, and its current members have all been appointed by Republican majorities. End quote. That was a report from several weeks ago with regards to how the governing structure works. And now again, this bill has not passed the legislature just yet. They're still working on figuring out how they can require them to play. But they always play when they're in the ACC. Just about. They just about always play. But I went Brian Windhorst in my mind. He had that, it's become a rather famous meme, and it's a great one. Why? You got the 2 fingers out, like I don't even know what you call them, the pointer holsters, whatever they are. I don't know how you describe it. It's the Brian Windhorst look. Why would they do that? What are they thinking? And everyone leans in and goes, I don't know, Brian. What are the Jazz thinking? And he goes, I don't know. I'm just saying. Got to be thinking. Why would they feel the need? Why would the state of North Carolina? Now, the reasons that they have cited for bringing forward this bill and advancing it in the legislature are related to matters of wanting to showcase the state of North Carolina athletics at the highest level and ensuring that local college towns are able to get the economic boost that comes with these games. I think those are valid pursuits. I think this is cover at the very least, at the bare minimum. Like at one end of the extreme spectrum, it is they're not going to play anymore because North Carolina is going to get out of the ACC, leave everybody else behind. But the bare minimum here is to cover their bases because they do care about sports within the state. And they do care. You have a lot of alumni in the state legislature at all these schools. They want to see them play each other. Regionality and local matchups. Some people really value those things. I know, crazy concept in college football in 2024, but such is the way of life. That's the way things go. I respect people for thinking that way. If their motives are truly to protect the local tourism and economic boon that a football game brings, and the exciting matchups that are played amongst the teams in the state of North Carolina, then at the very least they have to ensure, well, if North Carolina is going to get out, then we got to make sure they're still going to play NC State. Because that's the assurance. There's another part of the bill about, play App State, play East Carolina in football and men's and women's basketball, but that feels like a lot less of a concern if everyone's in the same conference. And you wouldn't have to worry about North Carolina and NC State playing each other if they move out of the league together, if they both go get picked up somewhere. So that to me is just alarm bells going off. They feel that this is a legitimate possibility that North Carolina leaves. I don't want them to. And by the way, I don't think they need to. I've mentioned this several times here on the show, but if you're new here, I'll summarize very briefly. The best case scenario for the ACC, if Florida State and Clemson are able to break the grant of rights, is to get a settlement of a couple $100 million each and then go to your remaining members, most notably North Carolina, Miami, NC State, Duke, Virginia of sorts, Virginia Tech, Georgia Tech, everybody kind of falls in. But really the headline programs there will be North Carolina, Miami, NC State, and Duke. Go to them and say, look, if you are concerned about an athletics revenue shortfall between the Big Ten and the SEC that's making you think about going elsewhere, here are many tens of millions of dollars that we can give to you. Just stay here. Stay in the ACC and keep it going and make it a premier conference as best as we possibly can. I think that's a viable path forward. At the very least, that conference without FSU and Clemson, comparable to the Big 12. Weaker? Probably. But is it in the same ballpark? Yep, it absolutely is, especially if SMU gets its act together the way that they want to, or if Stanford or Cal could ever elevate themselves as a newcomer in the league, then you'd really have something working. I remember what Stanford just got a crystal ball for a 5-star offensive lineman in the class of 2025. Did you know that? Guess what? It's a thing that happened according to On3. You never know what Stanford's very unique. Could be worth a segment of discussion here on the show, but I digress. On this North Carolina point, I don't think that you can overlook that they're bringing forward this bill that you need to keep playing NC State. Why would they think that they need to tell North Carolina? They haven't passed it yet. It's going through the legislature. But why would they feel the need to bring forth a bill that says the Tar Heels and the Wolfpack have to play in the major sports every year? Would that be because they might not be in the same conference very soon and there is no Wolfpack backpack? That's not a phrase that I coined, by the way. It came to me via the interweb somehow, and I find it quite amusing, so I use it. I'm just saying. You got to think about these things. Drop your thoughts in the YouTube comments, as always, or shoot me a note on X, formerly known as Twitter, at @McLaughlinCFB. I like Joel Klatt a lot. I respect Joel Klatt. I think he's a great voice for college football, and I think he has lost his absolute mind. This episode is brought to you by our friends at Game Time. Game Time makes getting NBA Finals tickets even faster and easier, and the NBA Finals are, right around the corner. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to tip-off, not up. They go down because they have killer last-minute deals. They've got all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee. With all that, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets. You can save up to 60%. That's over half. Buying last minute for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, whatever you want. You get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy, so you know exactly what to expect, and they've got that all-in pricing, so they're not slapping on last-minute fees either. Take the guesswork out of buying NBA Finals tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE. That's LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. I like Joel Klatt a lot. I think he has almost lost his mind. Drake Toll locked on Big 12. So Joel Klatt goes on the Colin Cowherd show, Drake, and says that if Shedeur Sanders stays healthy, Colorado can contend for a Big 12 championship. Now, let me get ahead of the Colorado fans who will deem me a hater no matter what I say, but I'm going to make this point anyway because this has been my position on Colorado for a long time. I really like their offseason because they have addressed the line of scrimmage through the portal in a significant way. They also have five-star offensive tackle Jordan Seaton coming in. Maybe he starts, maybe he doesn't. But again, placing more of an emphasis there, that's good. They're going to be a better team. I have been on they're a bowl team for a long time. Their win total of 4.5 came out. I came on the show and blasted it for being ridiculously absurd. It since got bumped up to 5.5. Is it because of this show? I don't know. You tell me. But I do not see a world in which they contend for a Big 12 championship. Do you?
Look, Joel Klatt's got to put food in his family. We all do. We all say things sometimes that we come to regret later on in life. And sometimes that relates to love or war or the Colorado Buffaloes football team and Deion Sanders. For Joel Klatt in this situation, I don't even think it's clickbait. I think the Colorado hype has died down. People are not talking about Deion near as much. There's the prevalent thought that he won't be at Colorado next year. Nobody is gaining off of viewership from Colorado because there really is no offseason buzz. Honestly, most of the storylines have been negative for Colorado, the school that brought in 42 transfers this year. That is, the formula didn't work last year. They won 4 games. And to say that it will work this year would be asinine given what happened last year. And the schedule is not great. You have Kansas State, or you have road games against UCF and Arizona in the first half of your schedule. You go to Lubbock, Texas. You face Utah. You go to the road to Kansas. And then you end the season with Oklahoma State, who returns with everybody. It's not a good spot to be in. There's not a lot of continuity with Colorado, aside from the Shedeur Sanders, Travis Hunter conversation. And those are 2 of the best players in all of college football. Problem is there are 20 other guys who have to be on the field. So if you look at just the roster, you ask 24/7, who's the best team in college football based off recruit rankings? Not in college football, but the Big 12 at least. It's Colorado, the only school that touts Power 5, 5-star, 4-star, across-the-board guys. But they didn't win with it last year. And the conversation right now is not about continuity with Colorado. And that.
Well, okay, let me jump in there because no, they didn't win at the highest level last year. But number one, they were in a better conference in last year's Pac-12 compared to this year's Big 12. And I know that there are Big 12 fans that disagree with that notion, but this is just objectively true. And so that I think is one part of it. And their non-conference success, I think, was demonstrative of that. They beat 2 teams that were pushing for bowl eligibility, and they weren't able to beat anybody except a lowly 3-9 ASU team in Pac-12 play. So that's the first thing. Second thing, they added all those transfers. They were a better football team than the year before. That's not arguable either. That is an objective fact. You have real data to back that up. They played better. They looked better. Their record was better. I expect them to be better again this season, but I'm glad you brought up the schedule because this is part of what I think gets overlooked in Joel's statement of, yeah, they're going to be a contender for the Big 12 championship. I think that's not so much pumping up Colorado excessively as it is overlooking what other teams in the Big 12 have done and what Colorado's schedule is. It is not an easy schedule. I think it's part of the reason their win total initially came out so low. And then Vegas, probably had a bunch of money come in because people realized, well, they're not winning 4 games again. Like, they're going to be a better team, which I agree with wholeheartedly and have for a long time. But to say they're suddenly going to be at Utah's level, they're going to be at Kansas State's level, they're going to be at Kansas's level, all teams which they have to play, by the way. Now, the Arizona one is interesting. I think they could go into Tucson and win that game. I have not settled on a prediction for that game. There are very few games in which I have settled on an outright prediction here. We're still in the month of June. Save that for the end of July and going into August, which we will definitely get to at that time on this very show. But I think that's a game that they're capable of winning. I think Arizona's a pullback team with Brent Brennan coming in and the guys that they've lost from a year ago. And Colorado almost beat them in Boulder. Arizona needed a last-second field goal to win. If that game were in Boulder, I think I would pick Colorado to win. But regardless, they have to go at Arizona. They have to go at UCF. Those are not easy games. They have to go at Kansas. They have to go. They have to play Utah. Like, this is a brutal, brutal schedule. And I think you're overlooking the fact that they're playing, the top 4 or 5 odds teams to win the Big 12 this year on the same schedule. It's just, this is not the year for Colorado to go get a Big 12 title.
And I get it. I get where Joel Klatt's coming from in the essence of, great quarterback and unbelievable two-way player who turned a ton of heads last season. Team must be good. Sure, Colorado could go 6-6. If Joel Klatt had said 6-6 Colorado, even 7-5, I'm probably not burning any houses down. But compete for Big 12 title. We're talking about the same team where the coach's son took to his Instagram story to ask players to join the team.
Well, he's still a very good player.
That doesn't dilute the player. It dilutes the program when the coach's son is posting on his Instagram story, hey, if you want to know what's real and what it's about, come join the Colorado program. And some third stringer at Henderson State's going, ho, this is my chance. Henderson
State shout out. That's a first here on Locked On College Football.
Philadelphia, Arkansas. And again, 42 commits came in. 8 of them were 4 stars. 8 of them were 4 stars. Utah had 3. That was the second best transfer class in the Big 12 this season. And Colorado did that by and large last year. Their portal class was unbelievable. And everybody thought, oh, wow, there are enough 5 stars there that they can compete. And down the line, they didn't win. They went 4-8. And the schedule doesn't get much easier. You see, again, 6-6 Colorado. Hell of a quarterback. Maybe the best in the country at the end of the year. If you told me Shedeur Sanders at the end of the season is the best quarterback in the nation, I'm not shocked. If you told me that Travis Hunter is the best overall player in the country, I'm not shocked. If you told me Colorado's 9-3 competing for a Big 12 title, oh, boy, I got some oceanfront property in Arkadelphia, Arkansas, right next to Henderson State to sell you.
I have a bridge in Brooklyn to sell you as well, because I think 9-3 would be like the absolute everything goes right. They get a break, a major player on another team who's tough gets injured. Like if Jalen Daniels gets hurt when they put and Cam Rising and Avery Johnson, then maybe if they don't have to go up in it against any of those guys. And this overlooks the fact as well. You're talking about 9-3, 8-4. Can they get to that range? They have a week 2 non-conference game. First of all, anybody overlooking North Dakota State on August 29th is a fool. Is an absolute fool if you think, oh, that's going to be an easy one. Like, I think Colorado wins the game. I don't know how easy that win is going to be. Rarely ever is for when you take on the Bison.
On a Thursday night.
Yeah, on a Thursday night, everyone's going to be watching. It's going to be great. Week 2, they go at Nebraska. Are we just like writing that? Oh, that's a win. Oh yeah, they're winning that. Like, excuse me, a year 2 Matt Rule with improved quarterback play. Now their offense, talked about this recently on the show, their offense can't be much worse than last year. And they almost made a bowl game. They had a better record than Colorado with a worse offense. Now, their defense was very good. Colorado's defense was very, very bad. Colorado should be a little bit better on that side of the ball. But here's a fun stat for you, Drake, that I don't think is going to play out this year for Nebraska. They did not have a single receiver over 315 yards receiving.
Good.
Their leading receiver had 310 yards on the season.
I don't host Locked On College Football, but I still don't think that's good.
It's not good. So like that Nebraska game, like when you talk about what Colorado's record will be, now, does that specifically pertain to contending for the Big 12 championship? Not inherently, no. I think it does, however, speak to the quality of football team that Colorado has and just the brutal schedule that they're going to play. They're going to have to work just to go 2-1. They play Colorado State. They almost lost that game.
If they go 3-0, to start the year, then
it's outstanding.
I look at Joel Klatt and I'm like, oh, shoot, wait a second. The same way last year we all did that with Colorado. They were 3-0 and everybody's going, oh, rank them top 15, Colorado, Deion Sanders, he's the second coming. And then it didn't work out. However, the one little piece that I will give to the Locked On Big 12 listeners who are also Colorado fans who thinks that I hate them, I don't hate you. I don't. I can't buy in yet. I haven't been given enough to buy in. But if there's anything I point to and say, hey, wait a second, it is last year was like down the stretch, Oregon State, Washington State was a blowout, but like Oregon State, Arizona, Utah down the stretch, Colorado was in those games. Like squarely, you could tell there's improvement toward the end of the year. If that is the trajectory and the transfers all buy in, it's still a hell of a roster. It's a stupid talented roster if you ask 24/7 Sports. The best,
and
it's
in the still Big 12. A brutal schedule.
Yeah, it's not good. It's not good.
You can make a case that's the toughest schedule in the Big 12. You got to play the top 5 teams in top 4 or 5. Like, who else has Kansas State, Oklahoma State, and Utah on the schedule? And you have to go at UCF. Absolute craziness there. Drake Toll, Locked On Big 12. Check him out on YouTube. Drake, always appreciate it.
Spencer, it's a blast.
We're going to go back to the ACC for a moment. Duke is about to pick up a transfer that they weren't supposed to get, and Where do they fit into the ACC picture? That's coming up next. Can Duke make any noise in the ACC? That's an interesting question. I know that the popular belief about Manny Diaz is, well, he was fired from Miami. He must not be a very good coach. I don't know. Go look at his record. He never had a losing record in conference play. Just going to let that sit with you for a moment. What conference was he in? This conference. This conference that he's coaching in at Duke right now. Never had a losing record. Maybe that changes. Maybe it doesn't. Vegas doesn't like him, though. Vegas doesn't like Duke at all. Now, when I see a win total of 5.5 for a somewhat veteran and moderately experienced, shall we say lightly seasoned quarterback in Malik Murphy, you'd think there might be, some kind of a floor. I don't dislike that combo. I'm not enthralled with it, though. The ACC's got some good quarterbacks to go up against. And in the 2 games that Malik Murphy started last year for Texas, he completed 56% of his passes, 209 yards a game, 3 touchdowns, and 3 picks. So he's got the ability to be kind of a game manager sort of guy, like capable, serviceable, solid. He's won Power 4 games. Not going to be his first time seeing legitimate football or real action. That's all really, really good. But he's going to carry your team to those wins? No, you have to have a team around him. Insert Manny Diaz and what should be a good defensive scheme. It was really good at Penn State. And just for a little bit of encouragement on that side of the ball for the Blue Devils, their defense actually won their spring game 21-16. They'd set up a system where it's offense against defense, and then you get points for doing things on defense, and the defense won the game. I think that unit is probably going to be sharper than Duke's offense. So they also are expected to pick up, according to Matt Zenitz of 24/7 Sports, Star Thomas from New Mexico State. Now, he's a guy who had over 600 yards rushing with the Aggies a year ago, over 5 yards a carry. He spent the last 2 seasons playing for New Mexico State at the independent and then Conference USA level. So one thing that I'll look for offensively is that someone they're bringing in as a depth piece, or is that somebody that they're bringing in to be a starting caliber running back? At the very least, he's going to be a solid piece for them to utilize. He can also make an impact in the passing game, as can Jordan Moore. That might be the top connection highlighted on this Duke offense this year, is Malik Murphy to Jordan Moore. How prolific of a tandem can that be? How good can that offense be? I think that remains to be seen. I think that's where the questions come in. You bring in a head coach who's a former defense coordinator. You expect that side of the ball to be taken care of first. But what are they actually going to get on the offensive side? We'll see. We'll see with Duke. Vegas doesn't love them, though. So their win total on FanDuel is 5.5, and this is a back-loaded schedule. So Blue Devils fans listening to or watching the show out there, just know that early in the year, you may enjoy a solid level of success. And then it's going to get very, very difficult, and there is not going to be a lot of success. That's how Vegas sees you anyway, because Duke is just a 2.5-point favorite at Wake Forest. And do you expect Wake Forest to be great this year? Yeah. Anyway, North Carolina is favored at Duke. Now, that's a little disrespectful. You want an early bet that I'd go for? Duke plus 1.5 at home against North Carolina. North Carolina had a better team and better quarterback last year. The game was in Chapel Hill, and Duke took them to overtime. Granted, there was a different head coach on the sideline for the Blue Devils, but there isn't an incompetent one stepping in Manny Diaz. So I think the Blue Devils could very well win that game. I don't think North Carolina should be favored going to Duke in what you know is going to be a great environment. Like, yeah, it's basketball school, basketball rivalry. It's still going to be a great environment. I fully anticipate that. But it's the rest of Duke's schedule that gives me a good amount of pause. So they open with Elon. I pray they win that game. I think they will. Then they go at Northwestern. Don't sleep on that game. Remember, David Braun executed one of the greatest college football turnaround seasons in recent memory. He came in after a 1-11 campaign at Northwestern. And Northwestern, went 8-5 last year. They won a bowl game against Kyle Whittingham in Utah and the pig farmer Bryson Barnes, a quarterback. Those are things that happened. That's an 8-5 Northwestern team. Don't sleep on that game. Don't look at Northwestern and see that purple N and just think, oh, yeah, no, we got them. Blue D, purple N. No, it's all about the Devils bit. Don't overlook that game. Then they come back home. They host UConn. This is a very winnable game. At Middle Tennessee. Don't know why they're traveling to a Conference USA stadium, but all right. Then they host North Carolina. Then they go at Georgia Tech. Those games are all winnable. I could reasonably pick Duke to win any of those 6 games. I could pick them to win 1 of their final 5 if I were in the right mood and still being reasonable, because their next 6 games, oh boy, poor Duke. This is why my take here is they're going to struggle to make noise in the ACC. I don't think they're a bottom of the conference team. I just don't see them getting to the top. I think Vegas knows something setting that win total at 5.5. Just trying to be a bowl team, I think that's a reasonable goal. Establish a culture, set a baseline expectation of success if you're Manny Diaz, and then work to elevate from there, because the back half of the schedule just isn't going to do you any favors. Florida State at home, SMU at home. Okay, if you win one of those games, you're doing great. SMU, clearly the more winnable of the two. But Rhett Lashlee and company, they're not going to be a bunch of slouches. They just aren't. So I would watch out for SMU in that game. Then it's 2 consecutive road games. At Miami, that's kind of spicy. That's kind of spicy. Manny Diaz coaching against the school that fired it. Can you imagine? Just picture this in your mind for a moment. Manny Diaz in his first year goes into Coral Gables and at Hard Rock Stadium beats the third-year head coach that was picked to replace him. Can you imagine how that would feel for Miami fans? Not good. Not good. That's one of those games, pressure squarely on Miami's shoulders in a big, big way. Then they go at NC State. I don't think they're winning that game. I really don't. Then they host Virginia Tech. Who's got higher expectations this year? That'd be Virginia Tech. And then they go at Wake Forest. So 3 of their final 4 games are on the road, and the back half includes 2 teams that are in the top 3 of conference title odds in the ACC, and also NC State and Virginia Tech, with SMU sprinkled in and Wake Forest on the road. Those in-state matchups, North Carolina, you never know, they can get crazy. So I do not have high expectations for Duke and Manny Diaz this year. I think bringing in Malik Murphy was a smart, savvy move because he can help you establish a culture of success, winning, professionalism. Just be solid. Just be solid. I think of Duke a little bit like Michigan State. Don't have incredibly high expectations. I think Dukes are a little bit higher, and understandably so. And understand that this is year 1 of a multi-year process. I do not believe Duke is a place in which you just come in and all of a sudden you're going to win 8 to 10 games every single year. I don't think you do that at Duke. Can you win 8 to 10 games every year? Certainly, especially if Florida State and Clemson end up bolting the league. That would help their case considerably to win games in the ACC. Turns out Stanford, Cal, and SMU are not as hard to go up against as FSU and Clemson. But missing Clemson on the schedule, yeah, that's break, but you get FSU, Miami, and NC State, and Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech, NC State. Wouldn't surprise me if either of those teams play for an ACC championship this year. I can see it. I can see it. That's all. I can see it. I can see Brent Pry making a run there. I can see Dave Dorn putting it all together for the Wolfpack. So those are really, really tough teams. So Duke, I don't know what I'd predict for their record right now. But I think that win total 5.5 is pretty telling as to how Vegas feels about them. The back half of the schedule is brutal. Get all your wins out in the first half of the year. It is going to be a struggle in the second half. That's where Duke sits right now in the ACC. Not going to be a bottom dweller, but I don't see him getting to the top. They're just trying to fight to stay in the middle, and sometimes that's okay. Appreciate everyone listening. I'll see you next time, and until then, hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.